Hey people, it's Steel Gamer with a Diablo 3 video about the Necromancer's Bone Spear build for this upcoming Season 21. Now I made this video for two reasons. First, I want to show that this build is way more powerful than people are giving it credit for and realize. And secondly, I have a bunch of people asking me in-game how the hell did I get my Bone Spear build to actually do this much damage. Because I've designed this with some items and a combination of skills because of how I'm using it, which makes my damage output far exceed most of everybody else's. So I'll show you what I've done, I'll show you the items I'm using, I'll explain the differences and where I'm getting my information from, and then I'll explain the downfalls, how to play this, and what to expect from GRs. So let me get right into it. So before showing you my gear and everything else and what I'm using in the cube, I first need to explain that what a lot of people are doing differently than myself is they're all using Convention of Elements. I am not. Now, Convention of Elements by far is a great ring. It's just on this build, you're screwing yourself out of damage. Let me explain. Convention of Elements only allows you to deal X amount of damage, which is up to 200%, for a total of 5 seconds for whatever cycle it is on the element of attack you're doing. So, for example, if it has 4 cycles, that means every 15 seconds, you have 5 seconds of elemental damage, and then it resets. That's not controllable. So that's what a lot of people are using. And again, it's by great ring. It's just on this build, when you see what I've done, you'll understand. Now, the second thing that I'm doing is that I have bracers that I'm using that a lot of people aren't either. So let me go into and show you my gear here. Okay, so right off the bat, you may notice that I am actually using focus and restraint. Now, what happens with focus and restraint is Bone Spear is a resource generator, because it is. You're generating resource when you hit it. Resource spender, sorry. And so it gets the extra, damage from the rings. However, when you get both of you get both set bonuses from that ring, you get 750% damage from each ring, which is a total of 1500% altogether. If you can manage to get both bonuses. Now, that's where the skills I'm using coming in, which I'll explain afterwards. So another thing you may notice that I'm using is Reaper's Wraps. That is because of the combination of other skills I'm using, which it's dead. A lot of people are using Reaper's Wraps. I don't want to make that a big deal. But I want to point out that the legendary gems that are in mine that you may notice are different is that I'm not using Zai's Stone of Vengeance. And that's not that it's bad. It's just I'm not a fan of conditional damage. When enemies are surrounding you, those enemies are not getting the damage from from Zai's Stone of Vengeance, which means you have to back away from them. So I'm using Bane of the Stricken. And it's not for that additional damage one hits. It's for the Guardians, the bosses, the Rip bosses. I'm also using Bane of the Powerful because of the elites. I'm dealing more damage than taking less, but I'm also gaining the damage bonus off of that, which is huge on this. And then I'm using Bane of the Trapped. So again, use whatever gems you want, but I'm just not a fan of conditional damage from Zai's Stone of Vengeance. So since Bone Spear is a secondary skill, you're going to use Scythe of the Cycle. Great, that's common. Then using bone armor. And you'll notice I'm also not using Curse or Scythe of the Cycle. Or, Grim Scythe. Because I am using Simulacrums. So let me go in and explain about the set bonuses here, which obviously it's going on here. But again, you're probably wondering where my Crispin sentence is, and it's in the cube. It's the only place I have for it because I'm using this. Now, when I go over my skills, I'll explain where I'm getting the other damage from as far as the focus and restraint, because I'm spending resources, but where's the resource generator? All right, so you got, for the cube items, Spike, and then my Crispin sentence. Now, the middle piece for the armor, that's subjective. Some people are using Requiem Plate, I can't pronounce that, sorry. Or some people are using Nemesis Braces. Use whatever you want. I choose to use Stewart's Grease because the maneuverability and the speed allow me to get away very quickly. It's really hard for you to hit. Plus, it's almost like a speed pylon. You can plow through enemies and just go through them, and you're a lot harder to hit. It's also a lot harder to actually hit enemies when you're moving around that fast, so it's a little tough. I also want to point out that the downfall with Bone Spear is you literally have to target an enemy with it. You can't just holding shift and trying to hit an enemy, it's too hard. So just make sure you're aiming it, which is another thing with the GRs, which I'll get into afterwards. So continuing on, I'm using a witching hour belt and just the normal stuff for this. So I happen to be using a diamond in here for the cooldowns on the bone armor, which is something you want consistently. But I want to point out that in my skills, this is where the damage ratios on me change with other people. Okay, so in my skills, my passives, it's Fueled by Death, Life from Death, and then Overwhelming Essence and Final Service. Now, I could be wrong on this, but I'm not sure. But the reason I'm not using standalone is because I think simulacrums count as pets. I'm not sure. But in any case, if they don't, then I'll probably change it. I never really looked into it, never really tested it, but who knows. So I just want to make clear that, that's why I'm not using that. So now for Bone Spear, I'm not using these for elemental damage. I'm using these specific runes on these skills because of what they're doing in conjunction with my build. Okay, so Bone Spear with Blighted Marrow. I'm not using it as a poison. I'm using it because it goes through enemies consistently and just stacks up damage. Devour. Some people are using Satiated. Some people aren't. I happen to be using Cannibalize because I don't really need the extra life. There's no reason for me to do it. Plus, the Simulacrums draining it is a little hard to control. Bone Armor. Again, I'm not using it for the poison. I'm using it for the stun. Dislocation. Now, Blood and Bone, obviously you're going to use that for the Simulacrums. And then you have Blood Rush. I'm using Potency. Some people are using Molting. Some people, Hemostasis. I just happen to be using Blood Rush. Now, this one skill is where my build differs from everybody else's. I am using Bone Spikes with Sudden Impact. Now, first of all, Bone Spikes is a resource generator. That is how I'm getting the secondary bonus off of Focus and Restraint. So I am literally getting a 1,500% damage bonus, not just from stunning the enemy and hitting them, but I also am hitting them with that, which generates ridiculous amounts of damage. Next, Sudden Impact stuns the enemies. And if you read the set bonus itself deals, your Bone Spears deal 10,000% increased damage. But with a Crispin Sentence in the cube and a Bone Spike stunning them, that triples my damage. So I'm dealing 40,000 damage per Bone Spear when I hit an enemy because I can spike them and I'm getting that damage. Furthermore, with the Crispin Sentence and the Simulacrums, the stun on them is now going to quadruple from them. So the Simulacrums normally are doing 40%, 40,000% additional damage. But the damage is triple when the enemy is stunned. So it's not just from the bone armor, it's from the damn bone spikes. I have literally 2 stun effects, which I can control. So I can literally stun an enemy, which is great. Now, the other reason why this is really, really good is because I don't have to throw a bone spear to open a door. This is free. And it generates resource. So if I'm ever out in an emergency, I can sit there and peg the enemy. The enemy gets stunned. There's no way around that. So when I stun it and then I start shooting bone spears, it's ridiculous. So that's the skills that I'm using and where my build varies and differs and branches off from everybody else's. It's absolutely ridiculous. Okay, so now let me explain the downfalls of what I was explaining about, the Bone Spear and things like that, about as far as the Rift Guardians and stuff. Okay, so I want to be clear that it's not that this won't do well, it's just not going to be at the top. But this build is a lot better than people realize it is, and it can actually do GRs that people didn't realize. Now that you realize and understand the skills that I'm using enhance this build exponentially, it's ridiculous. So now what happens is, what I've been playing, the greater rifts in this game are designed to screw your character over. They're designed against your character's equipment, build, skills, things like that. That's why every character has major problems in upper GRs, because the elites are just constantly throwing at your character everything that hampers it. So usually demon hunters get wallers and shield guys, so you can't penetrate them. Just things like that. Now, what I've encountered in GRs is that it's constant wallers and poison. Furthermore, you have Pulse, which is another one. It's pretty much a lot of fuck you for this thing. And every yellow, pretty much 99% of the, I should say 99, 95% of the yellows are all Juggernaut. If you encounter a Juggernaut with this build, skip it. Because you can't even damage the thing enough. It's just the way Juggernauts are. Everybody knows that. They're annoying. But when you encounter 95% yellows as Juggernaut, you're going to run into a problem. So what this thing does, basically, if you're running into that, this thing kills trash insane. Use the trash to circumvent it. It kills it fast enough where you're getting the timer on the GR up. Now, again, this may fail at some point, which all builds do, but this is, again, not to show that this build is great, successful, or anything else. It's to show that this build does far more damage than people are actually realizing because they're not using certain skills with this that I am. Now, it's, again, not to say that they're bad or anything. It's just when these websites don't experiment with this stuff, it leads into a lot of false information and false personas that people, have about builds and misconceptions. So I hope this video serves people well. And just to prove something, I'm going to go out and I'll just go into, the Fields of Misery. I'm going to activate my Simulacrum. I'm not going to activate my Bone Armor. I'm just going to use, so you can see, that's just a stun. Now I'm going to go into a GR100 just so you can see. Now, obviously, my Paragon level is really high. But the fact is, you see I'm stunning these guys. It's a stun. So I don't need to use Bone Armor. I can literally control this. So let me go into a GR just to give you an example of how potent this is. I'm going to do a GR100. I'm only going to do, first, X amount of time on this. So let me activate my Simulacrums. I'll show you how ridiculous this is. That was a stun. So I just want to show you the stun lock on this, why Bone Spikes is so good. Oh, this is on an angle. I can't stand that. That's ridiculous. As long as you have stun, you're really good. So again, this is a trash killer. Most of the elites you're going to run into. You may notice I'm also using the potion on hit. Life on hit. That's because life on kill isn't as good as life on hit, because the life on hit, it goes through every single enemy in here. So I'm just gonna, quickly go through this. As you can see, it's a really sick trash killer, and this is why I'm using Now, if you see, I'm out of mana, I'm out of essence, but watch, this is where the Bone Spikes come in. So I just wanted to show you, how usable this build is. So like I said, having Bone Spikes on this with sudden impact is ridiculous. See, I just did that with Bone Spikes. Oh, there's an elite. So let me kill this elite back and show you. Yeah, like I said, you're going to encounter a lot of poison and wallers. And one thing I've noticed about the GRs lately is that they've been constantly setting off their abilities pretty much every 8 seconds. It's ridiculous. I want you to see, I'm going to stun this thing. I gotta get these freaking things out of here. See, they'll send so many fast enemies at you, as I said, you know. Hold on. I can't isolate. For some reason, I can't isolate this guy. I'm gonna get rid of this shit. It's ridiculous. I don't know where that spider went. Did I kill him? Nope, there he is. So as you can see, I wanted you to see this bone spikes works ridiculous in this, as you can just see. So I wanted to point out that when people are not using these specific skills, you're hampering your damage. So as I said, I wasn't going to complete this GR, but I just wanted to point out that it's viable even at higher GRs. So I just want to get that out there and hope this video helps people. So this is TL Gamer signing off. Have a good day or night wherever you guys are.